There was a night I still can't explain without feeling a quiet shift in my chest, as if something unseen had leaned closer just to listen. I was 21, restless, and convinced that money followed only two things: relentless effort and blind luck. I had both, or so I thought. I worked longer hours than anyone I knew, chased every opportunity that crossed my path, and still, at the end of each month, my bank account told a different story. Numbers shrinking, not growing. Motion without progress. That night, the streets were empty. The city had gone still after a long day of celebration, and I found myself standing outside a modest building I had passed 1,000 times without noticing. The windows were dim, except for one faint glow in the back. Inside was a man named Erindor Halevi. He was not famous, not wealthy in the loud, visible way people imagine. No expensive watch, no polished car waiting outside. But there was something else, something quieter and far more unsettling. He had control, not over people, not over circumstances, but over himself, and somehow over outcomes. He invited me in without asking why I was there, as if he already knew. The room smelled faintly of old paper and something warm, like wood that had absorbed decades of silence. Shelves lined the walls, filled with texts I couldn't read and objects I couldn't name. He sat down slowly, reached into his coat and placed something small on the table between us. "Tell me," he said, his voice steady, "how much effort have you given to your life?" "All of it," I replied without hesitation. "And how much has returned to you?" I didn't answer. He nodded, as if the silence itself was confirmation. "Then you are working on the wrong layer." That sentence stayed with me longer than anything else he said that night. He didn't lecture. He didn't try to impress. Instead, he told me a story, not about money, but about alignment, about the difference between pushing against the world and moving with it. He spoke of people who seemed to attract opportunities without chasing them, of individuals who recovered quickly from losses that would destroy others, not because they were smarter or stronger, but because they operated within a structure most never even realize exists. "You're trying to harvest," he said, "without tending to the soil." Then he pushed the small object toward me. It was nothing remarkable at first glance. A folded piece of material, worn slightly at the edges, no larger than a matchbox. Light in weight, almost forgettable. "You carry this," he said, "not because it is powerful on its own, but because of what it represents and what it trains you to become." I almost laughed, not out of disrespect, but disbelief. After everything I had tried, after all the complexity I had encountered, the answer was, "This?" He saw it in my expression. "You think the important things are always loud," he said. "They are not. The most powerful forces are silent." I agreed to try it, not because I believed him, but because I had run out of better options. 90 days, that was the only instruction he gave me. Not forever, not as a lifelong commitment, just long enough to observe. The first few days, nothing changed. At least, nothing obvious. I still woke up with the same thoughts, followed the same routines, faced the same limitations. But there was a subtle difference I couldn't quite name, a kind of awareness. It started with small things, moments where I would normally hesitate but didn't. Conversations I would usually avoid, but engaged in. Decisions that felt clearer, less clouded by doubt. Then came the first break. An opportunity I hadn't pursued found its way to me. A project that aligned perfectly with my skills, introduced through someone I barely knew. No chasing, no forcing, just arrival. I dismissed it as coincidence. Then it happened again, and again. By the end of the first month, the pattern was undeniable. Not dramatic, not overwhelming, but consistent. Doors opening just enough to step through. Situations resolving in ways that felt almost arranged. I went back to Erindor. "You didn't give me the whole truth," I told him. He smiled slightly. "I gave you exactly what you needed." "What is it really?" I asked, holding the small object in my hand. "What does it do?" "It does nothing," he said. I stared at him. "And everything," he added. Seeing my confusion, he leaned forward. "You believe wealth is created in the visible world," he said. "Effort, strategy, timing, and yes, those matter. But they are not the source. They are the expression." He paused, letting that settle. "Before anything exists in your hands, it exists in a pattern, a structure, a field of alignment between your actions, your thoughts, and your internal state." He tapped the object gently. "This doesn't create wealth. It trains you to align with it." That was the moment everything shifted, because I realized something uncomfortable. I had been working hard, but in conflict, pushing forward while carrying doubt, seeking success while expecting failure, acting with urgency but thinking with fear. Contradiction. Erindor explained it in a way I've never forgotten. "If your internal state repels what your actions are trying to attract," he said, "you will always feel stuck, no matter how much you do." The object wasn't magic. It was a constant reminder, a physical anchor that kept me aware of something invisible but critical, the way I approached opportunity, risk, and value. Over time, I began to understand its deeper role. Every time I reached for it, I checked myself. Was I acting from scarcity or clarity? Was I making decisions out of fear or intention? Was I chasing, or was I positioning? These questions changed everything. Not overnight, not instantly, but steadily. By the end of the 90 days, my financial situation had improved more than it had in the previous 2 years combined. Not because I had discovered a secret shortcut, but because I had stopped sabotaging my own progress. And that is the part most people never see. They look at outcomes and assume complexity, hidden strategies, exclusive knowledge, unreachable advantages. But often, the difference is far simpler: consistency of alignment. Erindor later shared something that made it even clearer. "Most people think wealth is about accumulation," he said. "It is not. It is about flow." He explained that money behaves like movement, not storage. It goes where it is directed, but more importantly, where it is allowed. And most people block it without realizing, through hesitation, through doubt, through conflicting signals. The object, simple as it was, served one purpose above all. It removed friction. Not from the outside world, but from within. That is why it worked. Years passed, and I refined the practice in my own way. Not by changing it, but by understanding it more deeply. I noticed patterns, people who adopted similar principles, not the object itself, but the awareness behind it, began to experience similar shifts. Not identical outcomes, but similar trajectories. More opportunities, better decisions, faster recovery from setbacks. It wasn't about luck. It was about reducing internal resistance to external progress. At one point, I stopped using it. I thought I had internalized everything. that I no longer needed the reminder. For a while, nothing changed. Then slowly, almost imperceptibly, things began to slip. Not dramatically, not catastrophically, just enough. Opportunities missed by hesitation, decisions delayed by overthinking, a subtle return of doubt. It took me longer than I'd like to admit to recognize what had happened. I hadn't lost the knowledge. I had lost the discipline of awareness. So I returned to it, not out of belief in the object itself, but in what it represented. And once again, the shift followed. Faster this time, clearer, stronger, because now I understood. The object is not the source, it is the signal. A signal you carry with you, constantly reminding you of a simple but powerful truth. Wealth does not begin with what you do. It begins with how you align before you act. Most people never realize this. They chase tactics, strategies, systems, always looking outward for the next advantage. But the real leverage is internal, subtle, invisible, easy to ignore, until you see it. And once you do, you can't unsee it. That's why those who understand it appear different, not louder, not more aggressive, just more precise. They don't waste energy fighting against themselves. They move cleanly, directly, efficiently. And over time, that difference compounds. What you carry in your pocket is irrelevant. What matters is what it trains you to carry in your mind. Clarity, intention, alignment. Without those, effort scatters. With them, even small actions build momentum. That is the real secret. Not an object, not a ritual, but a way of operating that most overlook because it seems too simple, too quiet, too ordinary, until it isn't. And by the time others notice, the results are already visible, consistent, unmistakable, and very difficult to replicate without understanding the foundation beneath them. So if you're looking for the one thing that changes everything, don't look for something complex. Look for something that forces you to become aware, every day, in every decision. Because once that awareness becomes consistent, everything else begins to follow, not by force, but by alignment.